First of all, good afternoon, welcome here. I guess you've all got the press release, so you know the subject of this press conference. Let me just introduce you to the guys at the head table. New Zealand Rugby League CEO Phil Holden in the centre. On the far side, Stephen Kearney, the Kiwis coach. And on this side, Tony Ero, who's our high performance manager. Phil, do you want to make an opening statement?
Well, I guess, yeah, firstly, thank you for coming on a big day for New Zealand Rugby League, where we've got the pleasure to announce the reappointment of Stephen Kearney as head coach of the Kiwis. And we're really excited about that, so I think that's the thrust of it.
Any questions?
Phil, why Stephen over the other candidates?
Stephen was the standout candidate. We ran a pretty robust process, and he presented really strongly. I think that going through that actual application process, if I can speak, put words in his mouth, from what we could see, really made him think about his desire for the role, and it was really clear that he was the best candidate for the position. But also, importantly, there was a real sense of steel about Stephen's presentation in terms of, unfinished business, but clarity of what he wanted to achieve. So he impressed the panel with his vision for the Kiwis, and what he needed from us as an organisation, which I think was also pretty compelling.
Stephen, any second thoughts about reapplying for the job after the disappointing into last season?
No, not at all. No. Again, I've been asked that question a number of times, and not once did I think that, regardless of the result in the finals or in the final, it was always my intention to, want to continue the role. It's one that I'm, very, very passionate about, and one that I enjoy, and understand there's going to be ups and downs, with the role, but. The work that we've put into the group over the last few years is something that I wanted to continue doing.
Phil, were any of the players canvassed in your decision to reappoint Stephen?
No. It's a select panel of 6 individuals. As I said, we ran a pretty robust process, and no players weren't canvassed.
Can you just explain, he's been contracted for another 2 years
Yep.
with almost like an option for another 2. Can you just explain what the parameters are around that?
Yes, basically we're going to be, one of the things that's become clear to us is that as an organisation we need to put a lot more support and focus in on the coach and also in the high performance program. So we've got an obligation to support Stephen in the right manner. That's probably going to be a little bit different to what we've done historically. So we just need to make sure that that's going to work for him and it's going to work for us. And but let's be really clear. The 2-year term is also about seeing lift and improvement in the overall team performance, but that'll be measured on a whole bunch of things.
What type of things are you talking about when you talk about
culture? We want to put a lot more effort into that. Clearly, we want to lift our performance against Australia in particular, but it's a whole campaign right through, and part of it is that Stephen's going to be a lot more visible in New Zealand, and will play a key leadership role along with Tony with our high performance program, which is quite a shift from where it has been.
How's visible?
It's going to come over here a lot more often. So Stephen's made a personal commitment to do that, which is great. So, the first thing is that we're due to present a strategic plan to high performance sport in New Zealand for the next 4 years, and Steve's going to come over and be part of that presentation. That's never happened before. So I think that's a pointer to the future.
There are always learnings from past campaigns. What are some of the learnings for you from the last campaign?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to sort of put it in one. For me to say there's one thing. There was a number of issues. Obviously, there's an issue that we have dealt with and has come to light over the last couple of weeks, particularly that that for us as a as an operational sense, we need to have some policies and procedures in place to guard ourselves against particular behaviours. I think that was one issue from a coaching point of view. Looking at the tournament, the learn for me from the tournament is it's certainly it's a long tournament. We spent 7 weeks away together, and it's a matter of manufacturing or periods of breaking that up into possible periods of the tournament, and yeah, so there are. I think it's difficult today to name exactly or to tell you exactly the learn for it, because there was a lot to learn from the whole experience, and I think it gave me an opportunity to reflect on my past performance and how I need to probably do things better. Again, we're talking about one performance, over the course of a tournament. Again, it's the main performance, but again, I thought there was some work that we did, prior to that, which was pretty good.
So you've sort of touched on obviously the sleeping pill and the energy drink scenario. How serious a problem was it on the tour?
Well, it certainly compromised. It compromised preparation. Again, towards obviously towards the back end of the tournament. Certainly it compromised preparation for obviously the biggest game of the tournament. So when it's put in that context, it was an issue.
So players were still taking them before the week between the semi-final and the final?
Again, in terms of the detail, it's a practice that's commonly used in terms of recovery, not by all players, but certainly a number of players, throughout our whole competition, NRL competition even, and it's I guess to help them, come down at stages when they're mixing prescriptive medicines with, with energy drinks, and again, I think most of you guys in here would have written about it anyway. So it was evident after matches. There's certainly before the final, there was no evidence, the couple of the nights leading into the final at all. So despite what's been reported, that certainly wasn't the case. But again, when you're talking about compromising for us, when we play Australia, as we all know, we have to be at our very, very best, and nothing can be compromised. And when you compromise preparation, when you're playing against Australia in the mood and what they had 5 years of hurting them for that game too. So we have to tick every box, and for me, it was compromised.
When were you aware that it was an issue on tour?
It became evident after the quarter-final against Scotland, the weekend of the quarter-final against Scotland. Yeah, so.
And so you addressed the group, and then it still continued.
Yeah. I'll you answering the questions there. You must have a fair bit of information, mate. Well, again, what happened was we were, in terms of the staff, I was a bit puzzled by it, I must say, because we had a match on the Friday night. Saturday was normal recovery day. Saturday night we had dinner together. Sunday we were travelling down to London. So, in terms of I was a bit puzzled by it in terms of on the way down to London. I saw possible effects of, but again it was a bus trip. I wasn't sort of paying a great deal of attention to what was going on, and then so that's when it became apparent. And then there was the effects were still evident on the Monday. Myself and and Tony met with the senior leadership group. We needed to address the issue, and we did so.
Was any of the senior leadership group involved?
We're not going to get into individuals here today, and I think Phil will enlighten you on that. Again, we're not here to hang people out to dry here. We're here to learn from the experience and move forward. Yeah, so we addressed the issue after.
But
after
then,
that.
so you're saying it did happen again afterwards, though. So if that's the case, then is that one of the most disappointing aspects of the tour?
I think well, it's not one of the most disappointing. It is the most. It was disappointing that we had to go through that situation, and it got to that stage. So very disappointing. As I've mentioned before, when you are challenging for a World Cup title against Australia, you can't compromise preparation, and the actions of and I've got to reinforce the actions of a few did do that.
All right. You obviously are disappointed in specific players, which you won't name. Is there an asterisk next to their name in terms of future selection?
Well, I think that one of the things that to take that point further is that we clearly can't talk about it because there are significant employment law issues at stake, right? The second thing is that we want to work with these players moving forward. Now, in terms of selection, I think that will play itself out appropriately, but at the end of the day, that's going to be a decision that the coach and the selectors will need to make. And part of the things that we're looking at moving forward in terms of what we need to do is around the culture and the code of conduct and those sort of things. So that'll make it really clear about accepted behaviour, and if players can't either accept that, then clearly it will impact on selection.
And that's going to be an important part of it, in terms of the work that we've put into creating the environment and the culture that we have. If they don't want to align themselves, with that, then as Phil said, the selection process is going to be easy. So we've identified where we want to be in by the next World Cup, and the process and strategy and how we're going to get there. And we know ourselves that we've got policies and procedures that we need to put in place to guard ourselves against an issue similar to the one which raised its head happening again. And we're all going to be working towards that, and the players will need to align themselves with that. Otherwise, as Phil's touched on, the decision will be easy.
So is the slate clean now, after what's happened, or are some players in threat, in jeopardy now?
Well, I think that the first step is we actually had to appoint a coach who can then work with Tony in terms of the code of conduct and what's expected. Now that we've reappointed Steve, then the opportunity is now open for them to, certainly Steve, to address the players as a group and lay down the standards, and then we can begin that particular process. And let's be clear, we're going to be really robust, it's going to be really clear about what our standards are. But part of the challenge all the way through this is being that it's the behaviours actually not illegal. They're not banned substances under WADA's drug regime. It doesn't actually fit in drug-free New Zealand, so we're kind of pioneering to a certain degree on how we actually address this issue, because it's broader than just sport; it's a societal issue. I think what the point that Phil makes there, we've seen that over the last 2-3 weeks even. We've seen that it is a wider issue. The NRL are taking a stance on it. I know the New Zealand Warriors have taken action. There's a couple of clubs in Sydney which have done the same. The Newcastle Knights, I think the Penrith Panthers are the same.
So what you're saying is, what you alluded to before, is this is relatively widespread.
Well, again, it is widespread, and as Phil's just touched on, it's not an illegal practice. But I think the important part here is the player welfare. And again, you know, the thing that we don't want to, and I don't want to alarm people, but you know, the thing we don't want to wait for an accident to happen before we, you know, sit up and take notice. That's the important thing.
And that's always been our position. It has been about player welfare. We're really concerned about the practice, but also people's understanding of what actually is the implication of doing it. So I think, you know, I've used this analogy once before of the rubber glove. You know, you fill it full of water, you grab one of the fingers and squeeze it, being alcohol, so people understand the implications of that. Well, now we've got prescription medication and energy drinks, we need to fix that one, something else will pop up. So we need to make sure that as a code, the policies and all those sorts of things are really clear. So we're hugely heartened and delighted that the NRL are taking a position in that regard, and you know, some of the clubs have been proactively banning sleeping pools, so that's good.
What are your thoughts, Steve, about the slate being clean for players?
Again, you know, it was a bit hard, I guess, in terms of transition from when I was coach of the Kiwis, and then having to, you know, that time period, you know, ideally, you know, I wanted to jump on it, you know, straight away and talk to players, you know, which I did, you know, get hold of a few of them. Again, more so from a reflective point, to get their view on certain actions that they took. So, in terms of wiping the slate clean, you know, again, I'll keep taking us back to, you know, what we're trying to create here, you know, with the group and the environment and the culture that we're trying to build. And if it doesn't, you know, if that doesn't register or doesn't align with what they're after, then again, the decision's going to be, you know, going to be pretty easy for us, myself and the selectors. And that's the important part. You know, we're trying to protect something here which is, you know, important to a lot of people. And you know, and that's, you know, that's something which, again, when you talk about the disappointment and the hurt in terms of the circumstances of the back end of the tournament last year, you know, that was one of the, for me, one of the real painful aspects was, you know, there's a lot of people that are invested in this, you know, in this jumper, not the people, staff and players that were away on the tournament, you know, people back home, the people who've been watching, you know, cheering for us for a long time. You know, we want, one of our values as a team is to have a country that's proud of us. You know, so straight away, you know, that was a kick in the gut. So for me, I keep taking you back to, well, if they don't want to align themselves with where we want to go and what we're trying to do as a group, then, you know, then the decision's easy.
Phil, you obviously probably sought some medical advice about what happens when guys take this. What, I think to yourself, or what sort of, I mean, how dangerous could it be for players to do this sort of thing if they don't go too far and or whatever?
Well, I don't know, I've never done it. I think that's part of the problem, is that no one actually really knows. So that you can talk to the doctors and get a particular view. So, but everybody's metabolism is completely different. So I think that was part of the challenge that the guys found on tour, because some people it might be obvious and others it's completely unobvious, and everybody is different. I think that's part of the problem, is that there's no no clear outcome, and so therefore it might not manifest itself till 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, who knows. So I think that's the duty of care and the education that we want to put in to try and understand a bit more around that.
Stephen, if you'd known about the identities of the players in the week of the final, would your selections have been different for that game?
Sorry, can you please repeat that question?
Sure. Yeah. If you'd known about the identities of some of the players on the Monday or Tuesday of the week of the final, that they'd been doing this or were doing it, would your selections for the final have been different?
Again, as Phil's pointed out, you know, it wasn't isolated to, you know, one or two individuals, because I think if that was the case, you know, it would have been easy to make decisions, you know. So, and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't isolated to a couple of individuals. So, you know, for us, myself, in the management team, it was hard to establish exactly, who and the number, because it does have a different effect on different individuals, and some might have been one night, some might have been another night. So it was very hard. It was very hard to make that call at the time. To be fair.
How many do you think we're taking it on tour?
I couldn't.
Half the squad or a quarter or
Half
No.
a dozen. You must have an idea of how many people were taking sleeping pills. And you can give us an indication.
That was well, you think it's a small group?
Half a dozen.
It's hard to quantify.
Yeah.
I interviewed nearly all the players, but it's hard to quantify about how many. Well, you got to remember that in the NRL's reaction has shown that this is normal behaviour for a lot of players. Okay, not all of them, but for some players they use it as a recovery practice.
Did this divide the team, Tony? What was the reaction of the players that weren't using sleeping pills?
Obviously disappointed. It was a long campaign, but the group had addressed the situation and we got on with the semi-final.
Yeah, because you mentioned in the release actually that the players, where the group was divided, how did that manifest itself?
In terms of culture. And
Well, the one thing that we've worked on, very, very hard with is the culture, and there's no doubt it took a kick in the guts. Because again, ideally, we're there to try and win the trophy, and that the players who weren't involved obviously felt how the management felt that was being compromised. So. You throw that in the mix, of course, there's not going to be, there's going to be issues there.
You say that it's a big issue and widespread, so you can't have been the only team who've been taking sleeping pills and energy drinks on at the World Cup. Are you aware of other nations having this issue but either sweeping it under the carpet or not addressing, or it hasn't become public?
Well, we're not sweeping under the carpet, and
No.
the other teams, we're not asking questions of the other team. We're asking questions about our team, and
But
we've
are
done
you
that.
aware of other instances, and how?
I think that's irrelevant. I mean, at the end of the day, this issue rose its head. We're totally considering the welfare of the players. As Phil mentioned, the NRL's come out and is doing something about it, and we needed that support. We see our players most years for 4 or 5 weeks. We need that support from the NRL, and they gave it to us.
Do you see it happening at the Broncos, Steve?
No.
Have you seen it?
No.
No.
Have you spoke about it at the Broncos for this season?
Not that I'm aware of, no. No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm tucked away somewhere. They might have the players. They've had workshops. The players have workshops every other. They had one yesterday with Asada. So whether something was discussed in that, I excuse myself from that one.
how much of a factor was the whole sleeping pills issue when it came to the performance that the team put out on the park in the final? How much of a contributing factor was that?
As I mentioned earlier, when you play in Australia, okay, you have to tick every box, cross every T, dot every I, and get a bit of luck too sometimes. All right, so if you take that into account, and the way they come out to play, we compromise that opportunity or to put in that performance. So there's no doubt that it had a factor, had been a factor. But there were a number of other factors too. We had probably 2 of our most senior guys in the group who didn't play in the final, Tommy Luluai and Frank Pritchard. We lost a winger in the first 2 minutes. So again, there are a number of factors, and I think that the prescriptive medicine was one off.
Having gone through all this, and what sounds like a bit of a nightmare for a coach, when it came to reapplying, there must have been a part of you that went, stuff this, I don't need this in my life. Was it that easy, the decision to reapply?
No. Well, the decision was I do need that in my life. That's why I reapplied. No, again, because what we've got to remember, it was a small percentage of of a group, and I've been very, very fortunate to work with this group for the last 6 years, and to see the development, and I use one as an example of an Isaac Luke who made his debut the night that I made my debut as a coach, and to see him develop, and he's had issues over the past, the last time we went to England for sure, and he's had it's been a journey for him, but to see him from where he was to the way he conducted himself on the tour, he's now become an integral part of the team. He's part of the leadership group. So again, that's one incident with what you're talking about. There's some good stories there too, and that's what drives me to keep wanting to do the job.
Who are you going to have as your assistant? Yeah. Put plans in place for that?
Yeah, we're working through that now. Yeah, we're working through that now.
Can you enlighten us? Ivan's indicated that he's keen to continue.
Yeah, Ivan's he's also got a head time full coaching role with obviously with the Panthers, and there's time commitment there. So, but we're working through that.
David Kidwell, open to working with him?
Yeah, well, again, we're working through it. You'll find out soon enough, I'm sure. I've just got the job today. Champ.
You must have presented that with an idea of who you might have with you.
Yes, I just got the job today, so I did have an idea, but again, it's something I couldn't ask Ivan. Yeah, well, I'm going to get the job next week. Do you want to come on board? Because I didn't have the job, so yeah, we're working through it.
Tony, Stephen, you know the players pretty well. We talked about a clean slate. All the players forgive their teammates for doing what they're doing. We've seen with the Black Caps that they haven't forgiven Jesse Ryder and Bracewell. All the players forgive their teammates who have erred in this way, or they want them back as part of the group?
Well, I suppose, from now that Stephen's been appointed, it's our opportunity now to engage with the group, the wider group, and we'll be having those discussions.
And what do you think? You know the players.
From the discussions over the players, they can't wait to get back into camp. So,
So will you carry on managing the side as well as performance?
Steve's got a few decisions to make around that, but that's part of looking at a wider structure. So,
Part of the plans for the future, obviously,
Yeah.
is to get more wins over Australia. We haven't won the Anzac Test for 16 years. How do we improve our chances of winning in May?
Yeah, good question. Again, it's for us, it's about making sure that we put our best foot forward every time. And I think if you look at last year's performance in Canberra, and again it's 6-6 at half time, and we didn't go and we lost momentum after half time. And when we entered that week, we didn't have Benji, Jeremy Smith, and we lose Simon Mannering earlier on in the week. So again, for us, it's things have to align, but we've got to take care of our performance first. And for myself anyway, and the group that I assemble in terms of the staff, my job is to make sure I get the group in the best possible position to put their best performance out on the Friday night, and that's for me it's that's the key to it, and if we do that, I think we give ourselves a chance.
Do you think it's realistic for us to expect to be able to win that game?
I think it's realistic to expect us to win it at some point in time. Whether we're going to deliver that.
I hate to go into camp for a week expecting to lose. That's not my intention.
Is a week long enough to prepare your team to win the match, given that we haven't won?
But again, a week is all we've got. So regardless of the circumstance, where we play, how where we play, what the conditions are, and how we prepare. Our job is to go out there and represent our jumpers as best we can possible, and that's what we'll endeavour to do. And again, the advantage obviously that the Australians have is majority of that team do spend a fair bit of time together during the middle of the year. in an Origin series. But you know, if that's going to, you know, put the barrier up and stop us from going out there and, you know, trying to win a match, then we might as well not turn up.
Steve, I'll be the one to ask the first Sunnyville question of your new term. With him already committing to rugby for next season, do you use him in the Anzac Test?
Yeah, again, I think you know, that's something for us, myself and, you know, the selectors to work through, and you know, obviously with you know, some of the talent that is coming through, particularly in that position, you know, it's important to, you know, take that into consideration. So you know, that'll be a discussion that myself, Tony, and the selectors will be having.
I imagine you still have ambitions yourself to be an NRL head coach again. How does that work contractually? Should a job come up halfway through the NRL season, can you be a dual coach again of both the international side and the NRL side?
Yeah, we haven't really, you know, my focus has been purely on doing the best job I can for the Broncos at the minute as an assistant coach, and you know, now that I've been, you know, reappointed as the, you know, as the Kiwi coach, is, you know, is to pour, you know, what energy I have left into that role. Answered all your questions, haven't we?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Getting on minutes, we'll find off that.